Hello everyone, welcome back. Thank you all for taking the online class, and the reviews I've had from you and some of the messages that have come through have just been absolutely wonderful. They really have, and I'm really pleased that you've covered it and you've enjoyed it. I want to come on to something else though, because people have been reaching out to me to see if I would cover a glue chipping class, and the glue chipping being the fascinating process as it is, I really wanted to teach this, and I've been doing this for like nearly 25-30 years, so I can't wait to share this with you. I was taught by a lot of interesting characters, some really fascinating guys and very talented people. Some of them were Disney, and a lot of glue chipping been done in Disney all around the world on different fascias and over the time back in the day, and I've always found it a fascinating process. So I'd like to take you down that journey, and I'm going to cover this class and really go in depth to see some of the techniques and some of the processes and the recipes that are behind this interesting process. So come with me now, enjoy this class. I'm going to take you through it. I'm going to carry on now and show you what we're going to be doing next. Glue chipping. The process completely floored me upon my first time seeing this work. I first seen this ornamental effect while on a holiday to New Zealand in 1989 with my wife. We planned the trip with a stopover in Los Angeles, and I couldn't wait to get to America. It was on my radar for a long time, and I was only like 20, 21 must have been. And so stopping in Los Angeles, we had to go to Disneyland in Anaheim, and that was right at the top of my list as well, to just go to this wonderful park. While inside the park, I came across many ornate, interesting signs. One area, Main Street, had lots of hand-painted gilded glass signs on every corner, and shop fronts were beautifully created and gilded. Couldn't believe I was in there, because I've worked with a lot of the Disney guys over the years, and here I was at the beginning, and this is where I was going to be meeting a lot of the people that were going to be helping me in the future. But at that far end, standing on its own, was this ornate popcorn stand, all beautifully gilded. It literally stopped me in my tracks. I could not see what I was seeing. It's unbelievable. And all of a sudden I could see this crackled effect on the letters. And I looked closely, and the edge was a bright mirror line. You could just see this mirror line going around all these letters. And I thought, well, that's gold leaf, but what's inside the middle? It looked like frost on the glass. I stepped back and looked at it, and I thought, crikey, what is this? So I wanted to see inside it. So I stepped inside the popcorn stand, and I asked the person who was working, serving popcorn, if I could feel the back of the glass. He said, why do you need to do that? And I explained to him I was a sign writer, and he just said, yeah, go for it. And he just let me in to have a little closer look. Unbelievable. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Because the panel was kind of like heavily painted on the back, it was hard to work out what was going on. I took some photos, and we just left really. We carried on with our trip, and after the month's holiday, about a month's holiday, it was back to work at this sign company that I was working for that employed me. But there for a few weeks I experimented at home trying to replicate this effect with varnish. I was thinking, could it have been varnish? I just wasn't sure what this was. Different textures I was trying, but nothing seemed to match the effect that I'd seen in the park that day. On a lunch break at the company, I walked into the offices, and on the desk was my first encounter with this magazine called Signs of the Times. I asked if I could take a look inside. And what came next was to change my creative career within the glass and sign industry. I turned the pages to find pages about reverse glass signs, along with seeing some of the images showing the same frosted crackled effect that I had seen at the Disney park. Excited is honestly, it's an understatement. After looking through the magazine, in the back was a section about suppliers of materials and a book written about the process called The Art of Glue Chipping. This was by a guy called Robert Mitchell. I ordered the book, and it came through from the US probably around about 2 weeks later. This was the start of my journey into this fascinating chipping glass process. I mean, this book had so much information, but what really intrigued me was kind of the history of the fascinating process behind it. I thought to myself, it must have been an accident when this was first discovered. Kind of maybe a cabinet maker or a woodworker had spilled some glue on the glass, and then the next morning they'd come in and the glass was chipping, and it was just taking the glass with it, and the glue was popping off the glass. It ought to be as simple as that, and that's all I can think it could have ever been. My glue chipping mainly started at home working on test pieces and experimenting till I understood the process. Many times I poured the glue way too thick and for days nothing was happening. They were funny. I remember looking back at those times. They're kind of strange moments and thinking, how is this going to happen? But, you know, humidity and heat was the main problem for me in those early beginnings and understanding the full process. Bob Mitchell, who wrote the book Glue Chip Glass Signs, mentioned talking about the process with many glass and sign artists. I found it interesting that he discovered few had any knowledge of the glue chipping process. I mean, I even spoke to my guys that had taught me over the years. They'd never heard of it. You know, even 60-year-old guys, veterans, said they had seen it but had never done any glue chipping. Old books gave vague descriptions of using materials of an era past, but again, nobody had seen it before, at least for the last 80 years. I started to order materials to practice with this art form. I found a supplier from Bob's book by the name of Rick Lawson. Esoteric Sign Supplies was in the back of this book. Rick established Fine Gold Sign Company in Wilmington, California, and this Esoteric as well further on in around about 1978. Rick was creating lots of reverse glass signs for Disney in Anaheim. He was also teaching the process to Disney artists, and he would also hold a 3-day event every February at the studios in Wilmington, and he would call this, and it became known as the California Conclave. And what an amazing thing to be going to at my age. It must have been around about early 1991, and I decided to go to the back of this book, and as I say, I found this company and I found a telephone number. There was no internet, there was nothing else. It hadn't been developed, nothing had been invented to do with the net. So I thought, right, I've got to pick up the phone, and I picked up the phone and I spoke to this lady first, and she was called Lola Gray. Now Lola was a part of the same company and had helped Rick build the company over those years. And the company, as I say, is called Esoteric Sign Supplies. And Lola said to me, you need to speak to Rick. So Rick came on the phone, and what an amazing man. He said to me, Dave, I've never spoke to anybody from England before, you're the first, and I'd like to, if you would like, invite you over to the California Conclave. You know, so that was it for me. It was just so exciting. So off I went to Los Angeles with my friend Mike Bullis, who's now a sign painter, and he still sign writes in this area. Mike and I took the trip over, and it was our second time now to America. And Rick picked me up from the airport and took me to his place there in California. And wow, it opened my eyes, and he showed me so many possibilities for chipped glass, along with other processes that had never been shown to me back in England. Rick's knowledge about the process was so extensive. He had studied a lot about a company that was established in Chicago around 1900 called Rawson and Evans. The Rawson and Evans Sign Company. Well, I don't know what I can say about these. This is such an amazing company. So Rawson and Evans Sign Company was established by Charles L. Rawson and Samuel Evans in 1890 and was located in Chicago. Rawson and Evans was most known for the style of chipped, ground, enameled and embossed, along with gold, silver leaf, reverse painted, elaborate, and the most beautiful ornamental glass signs and signage ever made. So by the early 1900 era, Rawson and Evans had a second office on West Broadway, New York City. There were many other sign company competitors that produced similar signs at that time, such as Western Sandblast and P. Paws and Company. One of the main competitors was a company called the Doors Manufacturing Company, and they were located in Pittsburgh, PA. Doors made some amazing reverse painted glass signs. They were in, again, gold and silver leaf incorporated in these pieces, but along with other fascinating processes very similar to Rawson and Evans. Many industries across the US took a real liking to the signs that Rawson and Evans were producing and decided to hire them to produce signs both for the companies as well as their products. Industries like soda, tobacco, cigar makers, general stores, bars, drugstores, pharmacies, even banks, going on to whiskey, distilleries, breweries and textile manufacturers. They all had a vested interest in Rawson and Evans signs. Unfortunately, and eventually in 1940, the Rawson and Evans Sign Company manufacturing closed for good. At the turn of the century, where many buildings and their interiors were constructed of wood, marble, bronze, granite and other classic building materials, glue chip glass was also used widely for decorative effects in all these industries. Many ornate glass treatments were used alongside chipped glass. The delicate fern-like designs of the chipped glass surface alone, or combined with other glass decorations, could be found in transoms, partitions, exterior windows, and gilded reverse glass signs. The craftsman and workmanship was usually exquisite. Practically everything was custom made for the location, and time was not a critical factor back then. There was no limits to the design possibilities with using chipped glass methods. Using other glass techniques alongside this process yields the most ornate finishes. Today, we are now seeing a renewed interest in these decorative glass arts, and many of the artists that once specialised in this process unfortunately are long gone, and along with that is the knowledge about the formulas and the techniques that they used to share. But with the help of social media and everyone talking about it and today's technology, all through communication, it's helped many crafts around the world come back into fashion, and all this prevents it from becoming a lost art.